Some places are safe, familiar, traveled 1,000 times without a second thought. But sometimes, the familiar turns strange. The road you know becomes a place you don't recognize. Shadows stretch longer. The night feels heavier. And in the distance, something watches. Something that shouldn't be there. But it is, and once you've seen it, you'll never forget. The road was familiar, too familiar. Every turn, every stretch of asphalt had been traveled countless times before. It was supposed to be a routine drive, just another family trip to the coast. But as the sun dipped lower and the shadows stretched long, an unshakable feeling settled in. Something was different. The air was thick, heavy with an unseen weight. And somewhere beyond the road, beyond the trees, something was waiting. The drive was meant to be quick, effortless. But fate had other plans. A violent jolt, the wheel failing beneath them. A forced stop on a deserted stretch of road. The world around them felt different now. Quieter, darker. The tall grass swayed without wind, and the trees loomed like silent sentinels. The family was stranded, and as night approached, an unseen presence stirred beyond the headlights' reach. 50 feet away, something stood where nothing should have been. At first, it seemed like a trick of the light, a misshapen tree or an oddly placed shadow. But then, the shape moved. A face, pale as bone, peered from the darkness. Sunken eyes staring, watching. Its elongated nose gave it an unnatural, almost inhuman appearance. A thin, clawed hand gripped the tree's bark, as if it were bracing itself. It wasn't supposed to be there, and yet it was. A flash of light, the car's beams cut through the dark, illuminating the lonely tree once more. And in that instant, it was gone. No figure, no face, no hand clutching the bark. Had it ever been there at all? Or had the shadows played a cruel trick on the mind? But deep down, the answer was clear. It had been there, and now it had moved. Darkness clung to the landscape, an endless void beyond the reach of the car's lights. But in that suffocating blackness, something moved. A rustle, a shift, and then 2 eyes glowing like embers in the distance, watching, unblinking. They vanished just as quickly as they had appeared, swallowed whole by the night. But the feeling remained, the feeling of being watched, stalked, hunted. Finally, the car roared to life. The journey resumed, but it no longer felt safe. The observer sat rigid in the back seat, gripping a metal rod as if it could keep the fear at bay. They stole one last glance at the tree as they passed. Empty, nothing there. But it had been, and it had moved. That night would never be forgotten. That presence would never be unseen, and from that moment on, the road would never feel familiar again. Some presences make themselves known with terror, others with whispers in the dark. But what if the entity lurking near you wasn't there to harm you, but to watch over you? This is the story of a child who discovered they were never truly alone, and the ghost who listened. 10 years ago, a child moved into a new home, unaware of the presence that awaited them. It started with a sensation, an old, familiar pain. Years ago, an accident had left them with a strange sensitivity, a phantom pain that flared whenever something sharp was too close to their face. But in this house, something was different. The pain returned, every single night. Was it just old wounds acting up, or was something else lingering nearby? The sensation became unbearable, an unseen force pressing, suffocating, looming just above them. Every night, the pain pulsed in the same spot, right in front of their face. In a desperate attempt, they whispered into the darkness, "Can you please not hang in front of my face? It's hurting me and I can't sleep." And just like that, the pain vanished instantly, as if something had been listening all along. What could it mean? Was it truly just the power of suggestion, or was there a ghost that could hear their every word? Weeks passed, and curiosity replaced fear. The child's nightlight, heavy and old, constantly fell out of its loose socket, leaving the room in darkness. One early morning, they awoke to find it dim once more, but this time they decided to test the unseen force. "Hey, can you turn my nightlight back on?" Nothing happened at first. Disappointed, they left to get water, but when they returned, the light was glowing. The plug fully secured in the socket. The entity had responded. It wasn't just listening, it was helping. The next encounter was the most chilling of them all. One night, the father awoke suddenly. He heard voices. One of them was unmistakably his child's, but the other was deep, unfamiliar. The conversation was hushed, unintelligible, yet eerily persistent. When he entered the room, the child was fast asleep, but the moment he turned on the light, "Who are you talking to?" The child, groggy and confused, had no answer, but deep down, they felt guilty, as if they had been caught breaking some unspoken rule. Had they been talking to the presence in their sleep? After that night, the house remained quiet. The whispers faded, the shadows retreated, but the child never felt alone. The presence had become something else, something comforting, not a tormentor, but a silent guardian. When the family moved, the presence stayed behind. No more shadows, no more whispers, and yet the child missed it. Missed the quiet comfort of knowing something had always been there, watching over them. Even now, they sometimes wonder, was it truly a ghost? Or was it something else? Something waiting for the next lonely soul to call out in the night?